Well, Chelsea
Yeah,
Tyreman, thank you so much for talking with me on Rappahannock Radio today. And it's such a pleasure. I got to actually meet
absolutely.
you in person at Sperryville Fest last weekend,
Hmm.
and that was super special. It's so funny because I was just scanning the crowd, like my baby's it's a lot of people. I'm overstimulated, my baby's
Yeah.
overstimulated, and then I'm like, I think under that
Mhm.
tree seems like a good time out place, for us to just go and take some time. And then I'm like, wow. And there's Chelsea, who that's part of your whole thing, is holding space for women. And so I was like, how
Yeah,
beautiful is that, that I'm
there you go.
looking for a more private place to try and sit down with my baby and possibly
Yeah.
nurse her. And then there you are.
Mm, I love that. Yeah, thank you. That worked out beautifully. I'm glad
Yeah.
to have met you too. It's so
Well,
bizarre. Like you see people on social media all the time, but when you finally meet them face to face, it's really nice.
yeah, I know it's such a funny real life versus social media life. Obviously, there's a heavy overlap there, but
Yeah.
when that overlap occurs is interesting. Um, but I want to talk to you. You
Yeah.
have so many great offerings. Where to start? Where to start? I guess let's talk about just I guess that idea of holding space, being
Mm,
a caretaker of that sacred feminine energy, and helping
mhm.
other women to cultivate that, if you will. How did that
Yeah.
become a thing for you?
Yeah, well, so I guess I would just begin on that thread with just feeling the calling. I guess it was a couple years ago now. Just, I don't even know if I can explain how it came to me, but something just led me to start researching and learning about women's circles. I had never even attended one before. I still to this day have not attended one that isn't my own. But I something just was calling to me, and so I started reading books about holding circles and learning from other wise women who hold women's circles in their own areas. And I was super nervous, but I was just like, you know what, I got to put this out there and see what happens. And so I did, and I made a flyer and I put it around town, posted on social media, and I just kind of was like, whatever happens, happens. There's always a bit of fear when you put yourself out there like that, especially,
Yeah.
you know, not knowing if anyone is even in alignment with this kind of a thing. But the day came and I had a full circle. I think maybe about 14 or 15 women showed up at my door. And it was so beautiful. Just, everyone, we sat in circle and everyone, it was very emotional because everyone had been searching for something like this. I think all women are searching for something like this, but we just don't even know what it is yet.
Yeah.
But once you find it, ugh, I'm sorry, I'm getting chills. It's so
No,
emotional. But once you find it and oh, you're sitting
yeah.
alongside these women, and everyone is like, I'm looking for community. I'm searching for my sisters. I'm searching for a place to call home, and I found it, and it's magical. And so
Yeah.
over the months and years of holding circles, I've had to work through my own fears about holding space for women. There was a lot of an imposter syndrome kind of thing that came up, which I think is all just part of the witch wound, which is something we talk a lot. But then I finally learned that I don't need to have the answers for these women. I just need to hold this space. So I truly believe that women, we already have the answers within us. We already have all the tools that we need for healing, for navigating traumas, for, you know, finding our own intuition. We already know how to do it. And so my role in Circle is to simply hold the space. I like to talk about it as it's like a masculine container for the feminine to flow. Because
Oh,
if we
yeah.
all just get around, and there's a time and a space for women to just gather and have there just be open chatter, and we're all giving each other advice and all of that. But in Circle, we're all there to just listen and receive, and
Not
we're not
judge.
passing judgment. Yeah, yeah, we're just all there to hold space for each other. And my role is to just kind of set that container for whatever theme it is we're going to go over, or just kind of moving it along if we need to, and just have those kind of like boundaries. I keep making this gesture, but like I feel like it's like, you know, the boundary of um, the
No, I love
space
it.
so
Hand
that we
gestures.
can just
I'm a hand gesture person. Absolutely.
yeah,
You need that. That's
yeah,
that's
yeah.
part of your
Me too.
like, the witch essence as well. It's like, it's the spellcraft, but also like
Yeah,
the hand motions that come with it.
yeah.
I absolutely resonate with everything that you're saying, and to a similar. So I haven't actually gotten the chance to attend uh, like an official like red tent or women's circle, and I've been interested in yours for a
Mm-hmm.
while. It's hard to get everything, as you know, schedule wise to line up. But I
Yeah.
did. A friend of mine, a couple of friends of mine, had put something together to introduce their Abeta holistic birth like doula
Mm.
business, and they basically had
Mm.
just a small women's circle.
Yes.
And it's funny
Yeah.
because my and I don't know if this resonates with you, but like, and I think this has to do, and I don't know a lot about it in terms of like what you can call witch wound, but to me, it feels like
Mm.
I've never felt super welcomed by women. And so the idea of like sitting down with like a group of women, I was like really scared about it. Like not scared, like, oh my God, I'm not going to
Oh
go, but
yeah.
just kind of like, yeah, I'm not really
Yep.
sure how this is going to go type of thing. And then I found myself
Yep.
like crying and just like, I really needed
Mm-hmm.
that. And my friend Jessie, who runs the Painted
Oh yeah.
Peach, she's like, yeah, women need women. Like women have to have
Yeah.
women. Like you need that
100%.
um, interaction that you don't get from the masculine. Like you need that balance from the other
Mm-hmm.
feminine, and it's hard in a community
Yes.
where, and I'm not saying this community in particular or any, like I'm in the
Mm-hmm.
Western world where like women are
Yeah.
kind of put at odds with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Competition and yeah, definitely judgment and shaming and all of that. Yeah, I think that's definitely a part of the witch wound, and also the sister wound, which the witch wound and the sister wound kind of weave together. They kind of overlap a little bit. Yeah, because well, I could go down a whole road onto that if you want, but
yeah,
yeah,
well,
absolutely. There's
yeah. Tell us a little bit about
yeah.
what's the difference, the distinction between the witch wound and the sister wound.
Mm. Well, so when I think of the witch wound, I've held a couple circles on healing the witch wound before, and they've been so incredibly powerful. But I believe that we all collectively have this ancestral wounding from the witch hunt eras, which we all, how do I even, like, there's it's such a big topic, but I think there's a lot of apprehension and fear, like to the bone fear as women particularly, to be themselves, to share their gifts, to just kind of, yeah, to like shine their light because of fear of being ostracized from your community, from your family, from your friends, a fear of being called witchy or woo woo, or, just like odd. And so there's a lot that I find in our community, a lot of healers and wise women and witches who have had a really hard time putting out their offerings because of fear of, like, all of those judgments and shame. And because as women, as healers, anyone who would work with plant medicine, or any midwives and birth keepers, we were burned, we were drowned, we were beaten, we were tortured, we were murdered for doing those things a long time ago. And our Oh, it's such a powerful topic. I always get emotional, but
Yeah,
we
yeah,
remember that deep in our bones. We remember that. And I have women who sit in circle with me and they start sharing about something like this, maybe in this vein, maybe even not. But they say things like, I feel like my throat is tightening up. Like I feel like I have
yeah,
memories of being hung. These things come up in circle a lot. But then I talk about the sister wound interlacing with that because, you know, there back in those times, you didn't want to be accused of being a witch, right? As a woman. So you would point your finger. No, it's not me, it's her. She's the witch. Get her, right? And so women were turning against each other. Women who were sitting in circles together, days before,
betrayal.
were now fearing for their lives, their families, and turning on each other. And so we still carry this with us as women. You know, I think back to when I was in my 20s, or even before I started walking this path of healing my feminine, I would judge women all the time, shame them, like the slut shaming, the like, oh, she's prettier than me, I don't want my boyfriend to look at her, like, all of these things, they just like swim through us, and to it's really hard for women to set that all aside and sit in a circle of women without feeling some kind of fear bubble up. I've had
Mm.
so many women who come for their first time who are like, I am so nervous. I feel like everyone's going to think that I'm not part of the club. They're going to just like, who's this new girl? And within minutes, these women are just like sobbing, and they're like, these are my sisters. I know you already. They're hugging everyone, they're crying. And it's like, I always say the women who come for the first time are always the most emotional ones, because it's like they've held in, this longing and this calling for sisterhood for so long, and then once they're there and they're in it, it's just like waterworks. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful release. And so the sister wound and witch
It's
wound,
amazing.
it's definitely something. Yeah, it's definitely something that
Yeah.
comes up a lot. But that's why this work is so
Yeah.
important for me, and I think for a lot of other women, because like you said, women need each other. Like you can't get that kind of level of healing and listening and support and love. You just can't get that with men. It's different. It's a different kind of
Yeah.
support and love. But with
Yeah.
women, just so authentic and beautiful and natural, because it's what we've been doing since the beginning of time. It's our medicine.
Yeah.
It really is.
And there's only so much that, like, I mean, I don't pretend to know anything about what it's like to be like a man or the male experience, you know? And so,
Mm,
as much as I want to empathize with my partner and hold space for my partner, um, who is a male, but like, how, and they try and do the same, a good partner will try to do the same for us, but it's still
mm,
like you're a mother, I'm a mother. Like,
mm,
we've given birth, we've
mm-hmm.
nursed children, like,
Yes,
there's a whole other calling on us that I
absolutely.
think that, try as they may, I think that only a woman, another woman can fully understand
Mm-hmm.
that, and like how
Mm-hmm.
isolating it can be to be a mom. Like, you can be
Yeah.
in a crowded room full of kids and feel so isolated.
Oh yeah.
It's
100%.
such a
Yeah.
bizarre feeling, but at the same time still feeling like the everybody needs me mama goddess vibe, like I'm the caretaker of everything, but still.
Yeah.
So I think it's like women need that time among other, you know
Mm-hmm.
maiden mother crone energy to come back, hit the reset button.
Yeah.
So how long have you been doing the circles? You said it started with the circles, right? Is this
Yeah.
before your apothecary business, Moss and Violet, or at the same time?
No, this was after. So I started the women's circles 2 summers ago, and I started making plant medicine. Geez, I guess it was 2020, because it was right around like the pandemic chaos. Just call it that.
Hmm.
Yeah, so it was after, but I love, right now I'm kind of weaving the two together, because my the apothecary side of my world is now, like, there's a really strong focus for me on supporting women's bodies and our spirits and our journeys as women with plant medicine. So the two are kind of interlapping right now. Is that a word? I don't know. They're kind of weaving together right now, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
overlapping, interlacing. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
that is exciting. So your journey, though, which is how I actually think that I ended up following you, um, via Melissa Nyad.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that it was around the time where, it's obviously a very touchy subject. Everybody was freaking out, and rightfully so. It's a
Mhm.
strong, hits a
Yeah.
pressure point
Yeah.
about, the change in abortion laws.
Mhm.
And there was an interesting counter feminine movement that I found fascinating, that I think a lot of people, it seems to be misunderstood, which is that the idea that if you're truly in your power as woman, like no law
Mm,
can touch how you're going to interact with your own body.
mm,
And it's sort of part of the patriarchy for us to even think that
yeah.
somebody else can have power over our own existence and our choice to be the gateway between this world and another world. And I saw you during that whole process, and I was like, wow, no, I want to find out more about Chelsea and what she's doing. And then at the
Yeah.
same time, and I'm like kind of skipping all over the place, but this is just like
Okay.
the whoosh, like where I was like, oh my God, Chelsea energy, like I love it. As you were talking about your return back to your own like natural
Mm,
body and like the journey you've had as a woman, being like from where you felt at some point like our culture also demands that you needed to be this different
mm,
person
mm.
physically, and actually had gotten some, I don't know how do you put it? I don't want to put it in like a non-delicate
Mm.
way, that like, is it okay that I'm
Yeah,
talking
of
about this?
course.
First of all, is this like out of
No,
your comfort
this
zone,
is
or is it
totally
okay?
fine. This is part of the journey.
Um,
So,
I just thought like inspiring that you were like, hey, I had gotten boob implants at one point, and now I'm like, why did I do this? This is not
yeah,
me. And the whole journey away
yeah.
from that. And the fact that you were telling this story
Mhm.
publicly, I was like, this is huge. Like this, especially in this time in our world, to hear this. So if you can, with all those things in mind, tell me a little bit more about how you came to that like root in yourself to be like, wow, this is my grounding point. I'm going back to that.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to share about that. It was really vulnerable. I felt very vulnerable putting that out on social media. I always felt kind of like, what's the word? I don't know what the word would be, but I always felt like I wasn't, like I was talking the talk, but not walking the walk, as I was, you know, uh, walking this path of, you know, returning back to myself as a woman and trusting in my own power and loving my body and all of these things. And I was, feeling all this. And then I'd look in the mirror at these boob implants and I was like, oh, it was just, I called them my bags of patriarchy that I had to carry around with me because it wasn't who I was anymore. It was someone I used to be. And it was part of that person who I have spent years and years not trying to like get rid of, or a lot of times you'll hear people say things like, oh, I want that old version of me to die. It's like, for me, I don't want her to die. I don't want any version of me to die. I want to heal her and then integrate that story and that medicine from that experience, from whatever trauma it was, or birth experience, all the things, integrate, heal, and then move on. And so for me, I can't even really pinpoint what it was or when it was, but I was like, I need these things gone. I need them gone. I wasn't having, like, you'll hear a lot of stories about like explant surgery, where women are having health problems, or there's a rupture or something like that. But for me, it was just purely spiritual, um, reasons why I wanted them gone. But yeah, it was a doozy. I made the decision that I wanted them out long before I actually made the appointment to go and like have the consultation and all of that. And even that consultation was really, really challenging. I don't think that plastic surgeon had ever had a woman walk through the door saying they wanted them out. He was very confused. He was like, is there something wrong? Do you want them bigger? And
Okay.
I was like, no, I just want them out. Yeah, he was so
Did
confused.
did he actually say
Oh
he
yeah,
wants
he
them
was like, "What's
bigger?
the problem?" He was so shocked. And I think I made a post about it on my Instagram about, like, he started grabbing me and like, well, we could do this, and you've sagged so much since I last saw you. And I just looked him in the eyes and said, I've fed 3 babies since I last saw you. Like, I'm proud of the fact that my boobs sag now. The fact that I've, like, now that I've taken them out and I can look at myself in the mirror and see the stretch marks from my pregnancies, and like see the fact that like they're uneven, and like be okay with that, has been probably one of the most healing. Yeah, it's been
It's
really, really,
huge.
really healing for me on my journey, because I spent my entire teenage years and 20s just hating them and because of those same reasons, right? Because they were uneven and because they were not perky and all of the things that we're told we should be. But now I look at myself and I see a woman and a mother, and yeah, and I don't, and it's, but the other healing thing about this has been my husband, who like the first time, it took me a while to let him like actually put his hands on me after the surgery, not because of pain or anything, but just because of you know, the processing of all the emotions. When he finally did, I'll never forget, we were laying there and he put his hand on me and he felt me and he was just like, it's you. Like, you are so sexy because it's you. Like, I can feel you now, like, not some plastic foreign object. Is he was just like, and when he said that, I just like, oh, just tears. But it's true. It's so nice to actually meet me, and not this altered version of me that I
Yeah.
felt I needed to be for so long. So, yeah. Thank you for the opportunity to share about that.
Thank you for sharing it. And I love that you, first of all, you started by saying like you don't want to kill that part of yourself,
Yeah.
like you want to
Yep.
understand her,
Mhm.
right? Like that the woman that you were, because it feels like we go through so many different lifetimes within this
Yeah, for
own
sure.
lifetime, right? And especially because we're there right now, so this is the one I can actively understand. But like that transition between maiden to mother is a
Mm,
really
it's a
like
big one.
intense. I mean, I guess all transitions are. That's
Yeah.
what it's for, right? But it's, yeah, to understanding and the idea of, like you said, like this is this is woman body now. This isn't like
Right.
little girl body. This is like, that's
Right.
beautiful and it's made in way like this, but this is
Yes.
like we have
Yes.
hips, we push
Yes.
babies out. Like that whole experience, and embracing that, and then having a
Mhm.
supportive partner, a man that, will see you
Yeah.
for that. I mean, that was huge for me as well, like being around
Mm.
a man that was
Yep.
like, you don't have to shave.
Like,
Like if you want to shave, shave for you.
that's
Like
incredible. Yeah.
don't shave for me, right?
Yeah.
Like I
Hold
was
on,
like,
huh? Is
wait,
that a
what?
thing?
Like I can
Yeah.
do, like, or like, you don't need
Mhm.
to put on deodorant. Like if you want to
Right.
put on deodorant, but like
Yes.
I like the way you smell. Like your husband saying he likes the way you feel. Like that is
Yeah.
so
Yeah. It
beautiful.
is. And it's,
Like and I just wanted to like acknowledge how that is. Do you remember the moment where you were like, I don't like your kind of cornerstone moment where you were like, I don't want to be like that, I'm a different girl now. I'm a different woman now. I'm in a different place. Like what
I
inspired that, or
really
what was
can't even
the
pinpoint it. For
like
me,
light
it's
bulb
just
that went
like
off?
with all of these kind of, I think of them as like stepping stones on this path towards, I guess my highest self, you could say. And I can't really ever pinpoint where or why I have these ideas or things that call to me. It's just like all of a sudden it's there and I'm like, okay, I got to go with that. And so no, I can't really pinpoint when it was, but I'm just glad that it came
Yeah.
through when it did, because it's been definitely pivotal, I think, on my healing journey, is just, being able to learn how to love my body and love myself. And, especially, oh, I'll never forget, when I was having the procedure done to remove them, I was awake during it. And the doctor, the plastic surgeon, was this older man and just very cold. And you could tell he did not want anything to do with this process of me, like, coming home to myself and loving my body, because that would put him out of business, right? So um, but I was laying there, and there were two nurses who were women, and they were probably about my age, and they too were very confused, like, why are you doing this? And I was sharing the reasons why, and I said, and mostly I'm doing this for my daughter, because you know I don't ever I never wanted to have the conversation with her of like, oh yes honey, like mommy got breast implants, like there was no way I was going to have that conversation with her. She's only 3 now, so that would have only happened had I not do it. But so I explained that to them, and I'm just like crying and crying on the table. It was a very emotional experience. And these women were huddled around me. They were stroking my hair. They were saying, "You're doing a great job." And the doctor was just being very harsh and crying. I was crying a lot. And he said at one point to me, he said, when you're done crying, a thank you would be nice. And I was just like, Yeah, I was like, you know what, that just sums it up. But, the women
What?
were there just holding me and saying things into my ear, like, your daughter is so proud of you. Like, you're doing this for her, like, and I'm like, this is a perfect example of like women, we just know how to support each other. It just comes naturally. And like, we've got this man here, like, not, I'm not like against men, but like, it was just a perfect example of how, yeah, well, yeah,
That is the typical
toxic
masculine
masculinity.
energy.
Right.
Yeah. The of the but like yeah, that's the extreme, the toxic. But I feel like the masculine is
Hmm.
a little bit more sort of like the like if you will, like the winter's coming, like let's get down to work, whereas like and I'm
Mm,
discovering this in my process of understanding how my parents were kind of
yeah.
like flipped like that. Like my dad had more feminine energy and my mom has more of the
Yep.
masculine where it's like
Right.
very much like, oh, I don't really have time for
Right.
you to have this breakdown right now. Like your emotions are not okay. Instead
Hmm.
of like, wait, like you
Yeah.
said, that's an art of
Yes.
holding space. Like, hold on, you're allowed to cry. You're allowed to feel what you're feeling right now and not
Hmm.
feel like you have to hurry it up and like just be strong right away. It's like it takes so much strength to cry. Like that's amazing and so inspiring that you were able to one tell them how you were why you were doing it and not just be like, yeah,
Yeah.
let's,
Yeah.
just get on with the surgery. It was like, no, this is the point that I'm making. But it's also kind of weird that they were
Well,
asking you and like pressuring you
yeah,
about
yeah.
it.
It
Like what
wasn't, I
business
think
is
it
it
wasn't so much
of
like a
theirs
pressuring,
that
but they were just literally
what you do with
so
it?
shocked because, they've got women in there, it's like a revolving door of these women who are just, I don't want to say broken, but they, there's a part of them that hasn't healed yet. Right. And so they feel like they need to change the way they look. And I do not
They
have
feel
any
like they're
judgments for
lacking.
those women because I was that woman. I was her sitting in the waiting room, like hating myself. And so I don't have judgment. But yeah, I think that they were just completely blown out of the water that there would be someone who would come in and say, like, I want them out for no reason other than I just want to be myself again. Like they were just so shocked. But I'm glad that I was able to like maybe that, triggered something in their brains and you know, maybe they'll kind of have a different view on things after that experience. Yeah. I only can hope. But, everyone's on their own path.
They can
So
think about it differently.
yeah, this one's mine.
Yeah. Was there a time, I'm curious though, like we're so like you said,
Mm.
you're honoring and not judging that version of you, that version of Chelsea that wanted those to
Oh
feel like complete. And for that time period, was there a
yeah.
time where you were
Yeah, I
like
love them
happy with them
for
and
like,
like satisfied? Did it make
yeah.
you feel,
I was like, I think I was
yeah,
26 or something when I got
yeah.
them.
I mean,
And
and that's
yeah, I love like, and that's such a unhealed version of me that I don't even like thinking about. But yeah, she had her day and her years of, you know, I would just soak up the male gaze, like it was like a drug for me. And so having those implants was like the perfect tool to get that, right? Um, and then I think like once the bug got in my ear of like that I want them out, I just went through this like I was like, I want nothing. I don't want anyone to look at me. I don't even want my husband to look at me. Like I was just so like it was such an aversion to that. You know what I mean? And so yeah, I was like, I don't want to wear low cut shirts anymore. I just they wouldn't let me take them and I'm really sad that they
what did
didn't.
you do
But
with them?
yeah, I don't know what I would have done with them. Is that what you're talking about? Like the implants? Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
I was gonna say that would
Mm.
have been a cool,
Oh,
yeah. Like
oh
what would
my
you have
God.
done with them, like ceremonial to like release them out into the universe? What's interesting though about that like craving, that feminine craving, I feel like not so much like to be looked at, but yes, to
Mm.
be like basked in that feminine energy, I feel like does come from like the mother, right? Like
Yeah.
when you are pregnant or when you're nursing a child, like you have the voluptuous body that all young women are craving. So it's not an unnatural craving to
Yeah.
have by any means at all or anything wrong with that craving. It's perfect. It's just it's so misconstrued, especially now. It's like when there's it seems to be like I have
Mhm.
no I mean I at one point was that woman as well that was like I'm not
Right.
going to have kids. I like my body the way it is. As if something was going to be wrong with my body when I did have kids. Or I remember a friend of mine saying something like, "Yeah, you look pretty good. Like you have a long way to go though." Like after I had my
Oh
kid,
my
and I was like,
goodness.
"No, I feel great and I like the way that I look." But thank you for that. Yeah, so I guess I feel like in some ways there does seem to
Yeah.
be, and let me know if you agree or disagree,
Yeah.
please, but like a push to like not be a mom. Like it's like super popular to say
Mhm.
don't be a mom. And like um that's everybody's own choice, and I'm holding
Right.
space
Or
for
I would
whatever you
add,
want to do, but it just
yeah, I
seems
would
like there's
add
like an
not
agenda for
only
you to
like
not
the
be a
push
mom
to maybe
and
not
to
have
not
children, but
embrace that.
if you do,
Do you
you
feel that a
best
little
like
bit?
snap back and like, you better get your body back. And if you look any different from when you did before having children, like then you're deemed unattractive, right? By our culture. Because, in our culture, um, the maiden body that, you know, 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old body is the one that's like the holy grail of sex appeal and beauty, right? And so once you have children, you don't have that anymore. I mean, that's not a blanket statement, but overall, like we do change. And there's such a
Yeah.
pressure on women to, ugh, I could like this could be a whole other like series really, but like, we're pressured to get back to work, to get back to cleaning the house, to get back to our body, make sure we like lose the weight, lose the baby pounds, right? You don't want the mommy pooch and like all these things. And the reality is you can't. Like, yeah, you could probably try. And like, there are a lot of women who do a great job and they, they're healthy and they work out and they look great. Maybe you could say they look like they did before they had their baby, but you're never going to be that maiden again. You're just not.
Can I put a pin in that for a second and just say it also feels like, on that note of like a push to get your body
Oh,
back
yeah.
and like to get back to work or whatever, but like almost like to get your like social existence back. Like I've heard from some moms too where they're like, "Oh girl, like do it for you." For, and I'm not
Right.
dishonoring that you need to have like your individual mom time, but it's sort of like not what this phase in your life is about, right? Like like you need to have your alone time if you can, but the idea that you're going to just be able to, like, I had one mother after having my first kind of be like, "Well,
Yeah.
maybe you're just putting a little too much on yourself to put him first," talking about my son. And I'm like, why would I
Yes.
not
You're still
do that? Like
one.
she was like,
Yeah.
"Well, you got to do stuff for you." And I'm like, "Yes, I am, but at this point we're also still kind of like, I'm still nursing him. We're like
Hmm.
this still the same." He hasn't discovered that he's a different individual yet. And I just
Yeah.
thought that that was an interesting, like the idea that like you can
Yeah.
just, that mom has to be like super individual
Mhm.
and whatever that, entails. Like not just going and getting your house perfectly clean and having dinner ready, or going, if you did or didn't go back to work, that's a whole other thing. But just even the mindset of like
Mhm.
really, you are, whether you're not, you have a
Mhm.
partner there
Yeah.
who's super supportive or who's working for you
Yeah.
guys or working with
Yeah.
you
Well,
guys. It's still, there's like a drain on mom
it's
that
very
is
hard. Yeah. It's very
that
hard.
only mom
Because
can
you're totally
provide.
right. I never even really thought about
That
like
like
this
it's hard to
cultural
it's hard to
pressures of
lean
like
into,
the social
you
getting
know?
back to your social life, pre-mom, and you hear the whole like pump and dump thing, like go out and drink and just pump and dump and like it's like, oh, that's terrible, like I mean, I've done it, but like, it's terrible that we have this pressure to again be who we were before children.
Yeah.
Ugh, yeah, it's just such a big weight on our shoulders as mothers, because motherhood isn't um, honored or even like recognized really like that role. Like I think the real role of mother has kind of been lost. I think a lot of people are trying to bring that back as far as like being home with their children as much as they can and like, doing things like gardening and baking and homesteading and but our society and our culture is like, no, get to work, like women, like you need to be working and the kids need to be in school so that you can work and you can just buy your food from the grocery store, like all those things. It's been lost. Like the mother role has really been watered down, I think. And maybe even like stolen, I could even go as far to say. So yeah, I think when we are, when we enter motherhood, I think I don't want to go too far. I could talk forever about the
Why do you think that
feminist
is?
movement, but I think that feminism, we will round two, but like, yeah, I think that, obviously women deserve equal rights and equality,
We'll have to
but
do another session.
we aren't just small men. We are women. We have different bodies. We have different needs. We have different hormonal cycles. We have different. And in the, the name of equality, we're literally being like erased because people are saying things like, oh, well, women can do that too, or men can do what women can do. And, again, probably a sensitive subject. Yes, yes. Maybe I don't want to, or maybe it's not that.
And you're like, maybe I don't want
Yeah,
to do that.
right, right. And so all that is lost.
You're like, maybe I don't want to have to go on my
Exactly.
moon
Yeah,
to work.
sorry, there's
I
a
want to
bug.
go to a like cave or
Yeah,
a
it's been
shelter
just,
and have your moon like
we
alone
tried
and not be
to become
expected to
equal to men
interact
by
in normal
working and,
society.
powering through, even though our bodies are screaming at us to rest or to, be with our children and all these things. And it's such so broken. I just feel a deep sadness for the way things are because it's so broken.
Again, back to that idea
Right.
of it being misunderstood. What really is the female? What really is feminine? What is woman? And it's not just like you said, just
Mm-hmm.
doing everything that a guy can do. It's like being
Yeah.
so, true
Very
and in
tricky.
touch with what it
Very
actually
tricky.
means to be a woman, um, versus be a man.
Mm-hmm.
But that's also, a tricky thing to talk about right now. Like, because
Yeah.
so many people are like, well, it's not just, you can be whatever you want, which, I don't know. That's a rabbit hole of its
Yeah.
own to go down. But
You know, there's a woman, I can't recall her name at this point, but she's a famous midwife, but she says truth is truth is truth. Like you can't deny certain truths. And for me, the truth is for me that women are the only ones who can be women. And, I can feel my throat closing up with that witch wound here of, speaking my truth and feeling like I'm going to be ostracized. But truth is truth. And I feel strongly about women and our bodies and our magic and our cycles and how, you know, we are just,
yeah,
you can't fake, it's not a costume, it's not an identity to try on. It's womanhood and it's sacred and it belongs to us. And womanhood is sacred. And I believe, because I believe this is a true statement, womanhood belongs to women.
what would you say to an individual who, like you said, might be seeking, might be searching? And I really love the metaphor, the idea
Mm,
or the symbolism you're saying, like an identity to try on, a costume to try on. Somebody that is in that realm, and if somebody, or if you
yeah.
have had that experience, someone coming to you with that, sort of seeking that questioning,
Yeah.
do you have something like, how could you imbue some of that sacred, share some of that? Because obviously that's what it is. It is so sacred and
Mm.
powerful and beautiful that it,
So
it wants to
I
be,
did one time
it is
have someone
desirable
reach out to
in some
me who wanted
way
to join
for
a
whatever
circle,
reason.
and I said to her very honestly, I said, like, I respect you for where
Right.
you
What's
are
the
on your journey,
expectation?
but this is a space for women who, you know, who are, it's not, we don't just honor our womanhood here, our bodies, our cycles, our rites of passages are on our journeys. We don't just honor it, we worship it here. We worship our blood, we worship our breasts and our cycles and our spirits, and the fact that we can earth and produce milk. Like, we don't just, it's not just like this thing for us, this is like it's everything for us here. And so I said to her, this just isn't really the right place. I hope that you find a community that can, you know, um, that you would feel more in alignment with, but this unfortunately isn't that space. And that's just kind of like how I sum that up. That was the only time I've had that experience. But I'm glad that I did have it because it was good for me, I think, to really like hold that line because I do fiercely hold the line when it comes to women only spaces. I think it's incredibly important. And when we lose those, we are going to lose a lot of things for women and girls. And that's, that's a huge thing for me. So, um,
I deeply want to have this conversation with you, but it is very touchy, and I'm not sure how to like word it. Do you know what
I
I'm
feel
saying?
like if someone was questioning their womanhood, if this was a woman, a biological, adult female who was questioning her womanhood, I don't think she would feel called to join my women's circle. So I feel like that it's almost a non-issue for me. I know that you said, like you pointed out, you brought up the woman who did reach out, and I kind of had to say this wasn't the right space. I honestly don't know her intentions. Because she brought up the non-binary thing like without even any prompt, and so I'm not really sure. I can't. I'd have to think about that one a little bit. But I think if there was a biological man who wanted to join my circle, I would have to hold that boundary, just to protect the women in my space, and just maybe help him, they, them. I don't know how to be polite about that. Help him, I'm going to say him, help him find a space that would be more in alignment. I mean, I think that's just the bottom line for me is that I'm not going to start blurring my lines and blurring my own personal boundaries that I hold so sacred and true, to accommodate someone who is just not quite sure. I think I would much rather that person find a space where there might be other people like that, but in my community, there just isn't. We're very sure of our womanhood here, and like I said, we worship it. So I, yeah, I think I'll just leave it at that. Not that I. Oh, it's so hard because it's like you want. I don't want to be inclusive to the point where I lose my own um, truths, if that makes any sense. I think that's a really important thing to hold, you know, for people is, we try so hard to be inclusive and politically correct and, I want to welcome everyone, but it's like, yeah, but when you do that, you start to water down your authenticity, and this is very personally like a big, big, big thing for me, womanhood and women only spaces. And so I'm not gonna blur that line. I guess it's been a little over a year now. I've been really diving into learning about my menstrual cycle. And that has just opened up like a whole world of power for me. And so that's something that I'm really passionate about, to teach other women and to share about all of the juicy wisdom that happens in our womb with our cycles. So, yeah, I definitely hold a lot of deep respect for our bodies. I like to gee, what else would I mean, I think that just women's circles and being really um how would I even put this? Just committed to womanhood and committed to supporting other women and healing our wounds, whether they be collectively or individually, and just really creating and holding spaces for women to do all this work because there's a lot of work that needs to be done, on ourselves as a culture, and just for me, making the creating these women's circles and giving women a place to go and to like do this deep inner work, and then they leave and then they can just like all the ripple effects come out from that. And for me that's just um yeah, I mean, I don't know if you would consider that worshiping or not, but for me that's just, that's how I worship women, I suppose, is by supporting them and being, and doing my own inner work because that has been a whole thing, and it's interesting, like whenever I've got a women's circle coming up every month, and like the week or two before I'll be sitting there like, oh my god, I've got a circle in a couple of weeks, like, oh, what am I going to talk about? Like I never know what to talk about at first, and then I kind of, at the beginning I would kind of have a lot of stress and anxiety about like coming up with the perfect topic or the perfect theme and all that. And then lately I've just said to myself, what am I currently going through? Like, what have been some things that I've been navigating. I also look to the seasons. We talk a lot about how women's bodies, um, we are just little microcosms of the seasons of the earth, the seasons of the moon, and the seasons of our lives as women. And so I like to plug into that. But yeah, so my own healing journey has been kind of like um, almost like a roadmap for me to lead these circles with, because and it's so interesting because every time I do that, where I'm like, all right, I'm going through some like sexual healing right now, let's bring it to circle and see what comes up. And with every time that happens, everyone around the circle is like, this is perfect timing for me, like this is exactly what I needed to hear. And I'm just like, it's just beautiful. It's so beautiful because we think that we're alone on our journeys. You know, we think that like I'm the only one who is going through XYZ, or I'm the only one who's had this experience and trying to heal from it. And you sit in circle and the women around, you know, you're sharing your story and everyone's just like nodding their head like, yes, me too. And like it's just magical.
And you did like you free birthed, right?
No, so I had my two boys, my first two births were unplanned C-sections. So with my third pregnancy came along, and I knew that I wanted nothing to do with the system anymore, and so I decided to have a wild pregnancy and free birth. So unassisted pregnancy, no tests, no prenatal care, so to speak, within the system. That is, did lots of prenatal care for myself, but and then
Right.
yeah, I free birthed my daughter here, actually right where I'm sitting, in my bedroom with my husband here. And yeah, that I believe 100% that that experience is what just propelled me on this journey. And so I'm super grateful for her, her spirit to come through when she
Yeah.
did. Yeah.
And so is that your
Hmm?
first daughter? Like
Yeah.
your only daughter? Is
Yeah.
that
It's
your
my
only
only daughter.
daughter? So my second child, so I have my son and then
Hmm.
my daughter. My son, I really wanted to have at my mom's house, my house that my
Hmm.
parents built. So my dad had this. I found out I was pregnant in like January of
Hmm.
2019, and then my dad passed in
My
February
goodness.
of 2019. And I was like, I really want to like have a home birth in the
Yeah.
house that my sister was born in, like there, like in the spot, like where he ascended. Like I want someone like
Yeah.
descending where someone else ascended. And my mom was going through some health stuff at the time, and she had both of us at home, and was like all of a sudden just kind of like, I don't know, she turned a corner in her own way and was very concerned with it being my first child. So basically I ended up like feeding into that fear a little bit for myself, and then I
Mm-hmm.
went with a birthing center.
Mm-hmm.
I should have just had him at home because it happened so fast that it was like hard to even process that, and we barely made it to Chantilly. But then, so with my daughter though,
Yes.
had her at home, and I just that's why I'm smiling
Yes.
about it being like, so your daughter, isn't it interesting though, like
Mm.
bringing a woman into the world in this
Right.
alternative way? It's almost
Yeah.
like, of course, it had
Yeah.
to be
That's a
your
beautiful
daughter
way. I think.
that came in that way. Like not that you couldn't have done it with the
Yeah.
boys or somebody doesn't have that experience, but it's so special
Yeah.
when it is your daughter, right? And I felt the same way. Like I didn't do any. I did have a wonderful midwife,
Mhm.
but I didn't do like any of the testings or anything like that. And it's so funny because
Oh yeah.
everybody's always like,
Oh yeah. There's a
"What are you
lot of people.
doing?
Yeah.
Why are you doing that?" I had it
Mm.
less so this time because I wasn't working in like an office space. But for my first kid, I was working in an office space, and it was more of a
Mm.
traditional, like everyone's like, "Are you going to get a real doctor?" And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Well, midwives
Yeah.
have been doing this for like since the
Oh my
beginning of
goodness. Yeah.
humanity. I think it'll be fine." But yeah, there's something I'm looking forward to seeing that birth offering from you. That sounds super exciting because and of course a lot of people I guess could say that, I was blessed to have two very good births, and I am, and I feel blessed that way, but I also feel like having watched my mom give birth to my younger sister at home and myself being born at home, I think that
Yeah.
there is something
Yeah.
like I was less fearful of the idea of doing it more alternatively. And I feel like a lot of women's experiences,
Mhm.
and I try and tell this to friends that are getting pregnant or have kids now, like I feel like
Oh yeah.
their
Sure.
experiences are wrapped up in someone else's like fear of how it should be. And I think women are so sensitive to that. Like, I mean, talk about impasse. Like women can't even like have a good
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
sexual experience if like a pillow is
Yeah.
out of place or a smell is wrong. Like imagine if like you're trying to like bring another person in and like something
Right.
is not, you know, you've got fluorescent lights on you and a bunch of
Yeah.
people in your
Because
space.
we
It's like
are human, like
we're so
we are
sensitive to all
mammals,
of that.
and our bodies
And I
don't
just think
know
it is more about a
that
mindset.
the fluorescent lights and the strangers means that you're in a safe place. Your body, just your mammalian body, just screams danger when you're in a situation like that. And so I think we've become, and this just ties in with everything else, we've become so far removed from our womanhood and our animal bodies that, the idea of a woman birthing at home, even the idea of her doing that alone is like, what? Like people used to ask me, "You can do that? Like, is that against the law?" People would ask me questions like that, and I'm like, "Yes, it's birth. Like, it's literally the one thing my body was designed to do."
And at one point
Mm,
it was against the law. Like when my mom had me at home, I was born in 89, it
yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
like
There
legal
definitely are
to
some crazy laws out there,
birth
but
at home. So like
yeah.
that is a real like
What was I going to say? Oh, yeah,
unfortunately.
the birth. Yeah, so that's definitely why, as part of this offering, I want to dive into birth story medicine. So not just, I mean, if there's a woman who has a previous birth that she would want to process during that, like we would do that. But in addition to that, just kind of diving into the cultural birth stories that are imposed on us as women. We see in the media, not the media, the like in the movies and TV shows, you see a pregnant woman, and my water broke, and then you're rushing her to the hospital, and it's an emergency, and it's like we
Like cussing
cursing,
at
and the
her
doctor
husband
and
and
all
all
the
this
and
like
we
get
the
out of
birthing in
me.
hospitals has only been going on for like, I don't know, 100 years, like some, maybe not, maybe a little more than 100 years. And but look at how far removed we've become just in that short amount of time as a
Yeah.
society and as women,
Yeah.
to where the idea of a woman, you hear a woman say, "I'm going to home birth." God forbid you hear them say free birth, and the eyes go wide, and well, my sister had this birth, and her blah blah blah, and you start we we are terrified of birth because of what is imposed onto us and what has been imprinted on us, through these telling of horror stories, whether it be that or whether it be trauma from their own birth. Like, like my mother had has all sorts of birth trauma from my birth and my sister's birth, and she tells it to us all the time. Growing up, you hear, I would hear her telling me, "You were so big that the nurses had to lay on my stomach to get you out." And I'm like, babies can be too big, like, right, yeah, and that actually happened. But yeah, and so like we internalize all of these stories, and then when we become pregnant,
That's
we
horrifying.
we are already believing that we're in well, first of all, we're already believing that birth is a terrifying emergency situation that needs to be handled at a hospital. We're believing that birth is the most painful thing you'll ever go through, and I couldn't possibly do it on my own. And just all of these things that are just already in us before you even like have the chance to process the fact that you are pregnant. You know what I mean? Like, it's just all these things that are there. And so that's something that I feel really strongly about with this offering that I'm creating, is clearing that all out, like talking about it, talking about your own birth, your births that
So,
you've had, your pregnancies, and what is your narrative that you have either received from the others, or internalized, or I'm sorry, created for yourself. What's your narrative around birth, and how can we clear that? Because birth is such a natural, beautiful thing that we are designed to do. And to fear it or to turn it into an emergency situation is just, it's heartbreaking.